Chapter 13, King Beowulf. King Hygleik's heart grew big with pride when he heard what Beowulf had done. Beowulf had always been his favorite nephew, even when he was a weak, sickly youth and no one else had any time for him. In those days, the wits at Hygleik's court used to laugh at Beowulf. Ha! A silly boy, fancy getting himself stung by bees, and always mooning about, dreaming of adventures when he's not even tall enough to win a tussle with a goat. He will come to no good. You mark my words. Beowulf had come to some good now, and those same court wits had to eat their words when everyone learned what he had done against the monsters in the land of the Danes. King Hygleik ordered the most splendid feast his country had ever seen, and all in honor of brave Beowulf. Beowulf was not greedy or ambitious. The gifts that Hrothgar had given him he passed on to Hygleik. "You are my king," he said, "and I am your man. And all I won is your retainer. Here are horses. Here's more gold than any man can carry. It's all for you, dear uncle." He hesitated, and then he unbuckled the golden collar about his neck, the Brisingamen collar that Queen Wealhtheow had given him. He held it up in the torchlight. It shone like a star cluster. "And this," said Beowulf, "I would give to you, dear aunt." Beowulf's aunt, Hygleik's young wife, was Hygd, the daughter of Hereth. Queen Hygd was beautiful and wise, with a creamy brow and poppies in her cheeks. She took the collar gladly and thanked him for it. Hygleik was so pleased and impressed by his nephew's courtesy that he granted him as much land as he could cover in a day's ride on the white horse with the black mane. The mare flew over stone and stream and meadow, and by that sundown Beowulf was master of a greater estate in the land of the Geats than anyone save the king himself. The only gift that Beowulf kept was the golden ring Queen Wealhtheow had put on his finger after the slaying of Grendel. He could not bring himself to part with this. A few years passed in peace. Beowulf lived quietly, doing country things. He took to the keeping of bees, and most days would see him tending his tawny hives in the sun. The bees never stung him. They were big bees, too, armed with the kind of venom that would kill if one was unfortunate enough to be attacked by the whole swarm. But Beowulf had a way with them. The bees seemed to love him. Sometimes he would dust his cheeks with pollen and sprawl in the sun, and the bees used to come humming and crawling all over his face, so that anyone seeing him would swear he was wearing a mask of gold and black. He drank wine from a silver cup, never got drunk, and was very happy. Then the peace was broken. The land of the Geats was invaded by the Frisians. The Frisians were fierce and cunning. They came in the night, their long ships creeping up in the moonlit fjords. They burned, they plundered, they left death everywhere they went. But they always packed back to their ships and sailed away before Hygleik or Beowulf could catch them. The king grew angry at these tricks. He led his men in a counterattack. He burned whole villages in Friesland for revenge. But returning to his ship, he was trapped in an ambush. Hygleik fought desperately, for life was dear to him. But the Geats were outnumbered. Hygleik was killed. Beowulf himself just managed to escape, bearing his uncle's body when all seemed lost. He had to swim back home through a half-frozen sea. Queen Hygd was made sick with sadness at the loss of her husband. She was also worried because their only son Hardred was still a baby, unable to take more than a few faltering steps and say things like, "Mama, mercy, pity, peace, mercy, pity, peace, Mama." And she saw a bloody fight coming to determine who should rule the land. So she asked the people to set aside her own son's claim to the throne and have Beowulf as king. The Geats cheered loud and long when they heard this, but Beowulf said, "No, I am no usurper. I do not want the crown while anyone lives who has a better right to wear it." "Your feelings do you credit," said Queen Hygd, "but tell me, how can my son be king when he can hardly talk? How will he rule? Who will listen to him?" Beowulf knelt by the boy Hardred, who was playing with some blocks upon the floor. "I will listen to him," he said seriously. The baby looked at him. Beowulf handed him a block. "Mercy," said Hardred. "A fit quality in a king," said Beowulf. He handed the boy another block. "Pity," said Hardred. "A wise virtue in a king," said Beowulf. He handed him a third block. "Peace," said Hardred. "The end and purpose of all kingcraft," said Beowulf. He clapped his hands, and Hardred laughed for joy and dropped the blocks. Beowulf lifted him in his arms and set him on his shield. Then he raised both shield and baby above his head. "Long live Hardred," he cried. "Long live any monarch who speaks of mercy and pity and peace while still in their mother's arms. People, behold your king. Beowulf will uphold and protect him as long as he lives." Hardred grew up to rule as a good king should. He was kind and firm and generous, brave in battle, gentle in the company of women, straight in his every dealing. Anyone was always welcome in his court. This, unfortunately, proved his undoing, for one day he was visited by the sons of Otar, the man who discovered the North Cape. They had quarreled with their father and rebelled against their uncle, Onela, Queen of Sweden. They wanted asylum. Hardred took pity on the two men, doomed to wander the face of the earth because of a family feud. He said that they could stay in his court as long as they wished. Their names were Amand and Adillis, and they showed themselves genuinely grateful to Hardred for this hospitality. But when King Onela heard that his rebellious nephews had obtained sanctuary in Hardred's land, he flew into a rage. He tore at his beard and rolled on the ground in his fury. Then he took a ship at the head of a band of fighting men and set sail for the kingdom of the Geats. Hardred was killed by Onela's axe in the bitter battle that followed. Amund was killed too, and Adillas fled away. But King Onela was reluctant to meet Beowulf face to face in mortal combat. And anyway, he had achieved what he wanted to do, so he withdrew while things were still going well for him. After the battle, before the smoke had died from Hardred's funeral pyre, the Geats sent again to Beowulf, asking him if he would be king. This time, he said yes.